Hello everyone, the Instant Camera Guy here. I have had the week from hell in terms of repairs here at Instant Camera Guy HQ, with just the most broken cameras you can imagine. Often having like cascades of failure, just one thing after another, resulting in me rebuilding like the same camera like 4 or 5 times. Just a terrible week, so that's why I've been a little quiet. And that means for today's episode of the Instant Camera Guy, I need very low effort content, and that means we're going to do an episode of Show and Tell. Now, truthfully, this is actually an episode I've been wanting to do for quite a while now, because this is one of the most special cameras to me in my entire collection. If you've seen the thumbnail, you already pretty much know what it is, but for those that have stumbled upon my video through autoplay, allow me to show you. This is a very special camera in my heart because it is one of the first cameras that I ever really truly customized in an original way. This is a late 1970s Polaroid Onestep, which I have converted into a fisheye camera that takes Polaroid 600 film. And I built this all the way back in around 2013. Now, some might be a bit surprised about that because, this YouTube channel's only really been going since last year. But I've been repairing cameras for a very, very long period of time. I think I started around the same time that Impossible Project started, maybe a touch earlier, starting repair on peel-apart cameras. I've been doing this a long time, is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, this one dates back to about 2013. Effectively, as I said, it's a late 1970s Onestep SX-70. I have converted it to take 600, and I have converted it to take 37mm thread fisheye lens. And I've also added a external cold shoe so that you can attach a fisheye viewfinder. I'll explain a little bit about how I built the camera in a minute if you ever want to try build your own. But yeah, this thing is a hell of a lot of fun. If you want some proof as to just how long I've been doing this, by the way, check this out. Impossible Project. I think of all the cameras that I've owned, you guys can see how faded the film is. Of all the cameras I've owned over the years, this is certainly one that I've probably shot the most film on. Purely because this thing is impossibly fun to use. Forgive the pun there. I'll explain a little bit about the technical details of the camera and why I decided to build it the way that it is, and then I'll show you guys some example photos. I mean, realistically, there's not much to explain about this thing. But as I said, I'll probably go into a bit of detail in case you guys want to build your own one of these or something like that. But yeah, this camera came about because I had acquired multiple Polaroid Onesteps. This dates back all the way back to when retail was actually my main business model. Long before I specialized in customizing cameras for clients, I would buy cameras in order to refurbish them and resell them. That used to be my business model. It was totally different. I don't really sell cameras anymore, but back in the day that I did, and I would buy, I would buy a lot of different types of cameras, but the Onestep series, although they're very cute with the white and rainbow, I always found them quite hard to sell. Firstly, they just weren't worth a lot of money. Secondly, they didn't have any kind of built-in flash, and I used to find that the type of client that wanted a Polaroid camera of this kind of style, like a box-type camera, generally wanted one that had flash, so unless I had like a matching Q-light flash or an attachment flash to go with it, I found these things quite hard to sell and sort of make a profit off. Like by the time I dismantled them and cleaned them up, like I was barely making any money reselling the things, even after guaranteeing that they were working and providing a warranty and things. So I got to thinking, like, how could I make the Onestep SX-70 more fun to use? Because they are a very limited camera in terms of what they can do. If we remove the fisheye lens, and just talk about some of the stock features of the camera. I mean, these things are really about as simple as you get. You've got a single element plastic meniscus lens, and it is fixed focus. That is to say, it's pretty much optimized for photos that are around sort of 4 to 6 feet away, but pretty much everything will be sharp from about that point all the way to the horizon at infinity. And I had a lot of these in stock that had, as I said, no flash or anything like that, and it made me sort of think, like, how can I make these things a bit more interesting? And around the same time, Lomography had released a lot of like little fixed focus fisheye cameras. Holga was, 2013 was like peak Lomography if you were into sort of toy cameras. And so many of those had either fisheye accessory lenses you could purchase or just came with a built-in fisheye lens to take really wide-angle photos. And I started to think, well, what if I could do that with Polaroid film? And what I figured out is, if you take the face panel off of one of these and you remove the original black ring, now sometimes these things are held in place just with clips and it's very easy to remove these black rings. Sometimes they are plastic welded on and you'll need to grab like heavy duty pliers and physically rip it off. But if you remove that, the diameter of that hole is about 42 millimeters. And so that means if you get a 42 millimeter to 49 millimeter stepping ring, right, for filters, and you press it in there, it's a really nice snug fit. And then what you can do is get a 49 millimeter to 37 millimeter filter adapter. And what you've basically just done is taken the original little plastic lens surrounding and converted that to a 37 millimeter filter thread. Now what I would do is use small screws to actually attach the filter thread to the front of this plastic housing, but once that was done, that allowed you to put on any kind of 37 millimeter filter that you could really get your hands on. And what I found is that if you got a 0.25 times fisheye lens, you would end up with perfectly circular fisheye photos pretty much in the middle of the square Polaroid frame of film. Now the reason that this works so well is that this is such a simple box camera. It is fixed focus. Fisheye lens adapters tend not to work very well on cameras with autofocus. And that's because when you attach a fisheye lens, what you're doing is effectively changing the focal length of the lens. So this is a 0.25 times adapter, so it's basically dividing the focal length by a factor of 4, meaning that instead of being, sort of 100 millimeters or so, this lens is now a 25 millimeter lens, which if we talk about that in terms of 35 mil equivalent, it's basically an 8 mil fisheye. So you really do get sort of like a whole kind of 180 degree spread onto a circular frame. And as I said, the reason that it works is it's fixed focus. So when you take a fisheye lens and put it on that, pretty much what that means is with this particular camera, everything is in focus from about 30 centimeters all the way to the horizon. And so what that really enables you to do is get a lot of really fun, like fisheye super wide photos. I can't overstate just how fun this camera is to use. You can get really, really close. Like you can get it all up in someone's grill and still capture like a really great portrait of them because of how wide it becomes. Now, in terms of a viewfinder, what I used to do back in the day, I actually, as I said, Lomography was really, really big. The Holga factory was still open at that point. And what I used to do, I used to buy in bulk. You could get them from eBay, little Holga fisheye viewfinders. Now the viewfinder that's actually on here at the moment is off a Lomography Diana. But I acquired this one much later on. I quite like the Diana's viewfinder better because it's spherical, like it looks really cute. But the Holga fisheye lens did exactly the same trick. And I effectively found a supplier that could do these lenses for me in black without the sort of names around the ring. And These were really cheap for me to buy back in the day. The cost of these lenses has gone up by a factor of 3 or more if you were to buy the same lens now. I used to be able to pick these up for about 20 Australian dollars a piece, meaning that by the time I refurbished the entire camera, these were really cheap for me to restore. And I would often sell them for about 150 to 200 bucks a pop, Australian. So you can sort of multiply that by 0.6 if you want the equivalent US dollars. I think it's about 120 bucks or something I was selling these things for. With a Holga fisheye lens for the viewfinder, and the generic branded black lens. I cannot get them in black anymore. You can still get these exact kind of lenses, except these days I can only find them in silver. If anyone can find these for me in black, I would love to know. But I have scoured the edge of the earth in terms of AliExpress and eBay and that kind of stuff, and I can only find them in silver. And these days I find that they're about 65 Australian dollars a piece, instead of about 20 as they were back in 2013. So yeah, talk about inflation, right? The cost of fisheye lenses has gone nuts. But yeah, I think that's about it. As I said, back in the day, I didn't I-type convert them because in 2013, I-type film I don't think existed at the time. It was either you chose SX-70 or 600 film. And the reason that I modified these things to take 600 film is SX-70 film in a camera that only has an f/14 lens or so is really limiting. So by modifying these things to take 600 film, it really gave you that faster shutter speed and allowed for results in much lower light environments. So yeah, by the time all of the little accessories were added on, it became actually quite a capable camera in terms of low light. I also found that the wide lens tended to hide a lot of motion blur, so you could very comfortably take photos that would do a 1 second exposure and they would still come out very sharp. But yeah, as I said, I added the I-type back much later on. I think I did that a year or two ago after I discovered how to do it. But yeah, with everything that I'm telling you here, if you were the adventurous type, you could feel free to reproduce what I've made here. It's just a matter of finding parts. I think the hardest thing to find these days would be the little fisheye viewfinders, because the Holga factory is no longer in business, meaning you'll probably need to track down Diana viewfinders instead from the Lomography Diana fisheye lens set. But that's really the hardest part. This particular cold shoe that I have on the camera is off a Polaroid 180. Well, it's the style that Polaroid used to use on a lot of their old folding land cameras. I used to buy a lot of industrial Polaroid equipment that had these cold shoes, and for a while I had 20 of them in stock, so I used to use these on all of my personal cameras when it came time to putting cold shoes on things, because they're just really good quality design. But yeah, I think enough waffling about the camera itself. Let's have a little gallery. So you guys saw the photo that ejected when I showed you the Impossible Project Frog Tongue. All of this film that I'm showing you now was shot in around 2013. So this was very experimental Impossible Project film. I think the film was color protection for the most part, or PX680. Look at that. How's that for some nostalgia, hey? Some of the frames that I have here are special editions. So back in the day, Impossible Project did something called PX680 American Woods. One thing that I really remember about this is from 2012. So maybe this camera was even earlier than that, but I remember making these around 2013. But I guess the first one I made must have been 2012. What I certainly know is that it predates me putting the date on things. I did label this as the first one that I ever produced. I think I ended up making about 50 of these for clients. But this was before I used to put the date on things of when I refurbished it. But yeah, this was, just to give you guys an idea, this was back when America was really struggling after the global financial crisis, and Australia was doing insanely well in terms of the economy. And it meant that for the first time ever, that I could ever remember, the Australian dollar was actually worth more than the US dollar. And these PX680 American wood frames were so cheap to purchase from Urban Outfitters that I could get a 3-pack of them for the same price as a single pack of film in a store in Australia, and that was shipped to my door. So I used to buy a lot of this PX680 American Wood stuff. Anyway, let's have a look at some photos. So yeah, if they're all really, really funky colors, that's why. Because a lot of these photos, as I said, are not only are they a decade old, but it was Impossible Project film that I shot them on. But yeah, look how yellow Impossible Project film used to be. I don't know why I was wearing a suit in this photo, but yeah, this camera was awesome for taking self-portraits because it's so wide. So I spent like a lot of time with this thing taking self-portraits. I think half the photos I have in here are just like selfies of myself. At the end of this video, I will also try and put up a gallery of some scans that I did back in the day as well. But as you can see, super wide, the circular fisheye fits really nicely in the square frame. I always get asked, would this match really well with a circle frame 600? The answer is yeah, probably. It's just that the issue is circle frame is very hard to find in stores in Australia. These photos I shot, this one here of the train, was when I went to Melbourne for the first time. But yeah, these things, it was literally so much fun. I think I've shot more on this camera. This is what I mean, by the way, about low light performance. Now, the reason this is very yellow is because this was inside the museum in Melbourne, and this was tungsten lighting. But this was just like indoors in a fairly, I mean, the room was fairly dim, to be honest. This is where they keep all of the taxidermy animals. I think this is a polar bear. And yeah, despite the fact that this only has like I think it's an f/14 lens off the top of my head, it's really, it's a smaller aperture than the folding SX-70 for sure. And the 600 conversion just allows you to sort of just get that much better low light performance. This was when we first got when my parents first got their German Shepherd Lara. They adopted her. She was so cute. This was a Frankenstein lamp that I found in an antique store in Melbourne when I was visiting. I think that's in Perth, in the city. Look how young I was. This is before years of repair aged me. This is a photo that I took when we had just moved into our apartment in Melbourne, the first place we ever lived in. And yeah, here is that American Woods. See what I mean? It's like a wood grain frame. Really cool stuff. This was one of my favorite special edition films to shoot because the colors on this were really, really good in terms of like stability of that batch. So I always found I got really good results. This is another fisheye 600 that I built. This one in black. This is a portrait someone took of me with like a custom Frankenstein's peel-apart camera. That used to be my main business model. Like, I sold these things on the side as a bit of fun, and I sold like Polaroid 600s and stuff, but my main business model was customizing peel-apart cameras back in the day. And I pivoted to SX-70 when Fuji discontinued the film. My friend Sebastian, I really like this photo. He kind of looks like he's from a punk band or something. This was Gary from Film Never Die on a photo walk that we were on once. But yeah, it's just such a fun camera. Like it's just always fun. Like wherever I would take it, people would ask me to like take a portrait of them with it. Like I remember this family was like, what on earth are you using? So they were like, can you take a photo of us? It was so cool. It's an old Valiant. But yeah, it's such a good fun camera to use. If you're wondering why I have so many self-portraits of myself, by the way, a lot of these were test photos that I took with other versions of these that I built. As I said, I think I ended up producing about 50 of these overall before I stopped being able to get the lenses. And if you're lucky, I mean, most of them I sold within Australia, but you do see them surface every now and again. But yeah, that's I mean, look, what else can I say? It's a Onestep SX-70 converted to 600, well, now converted to I-type, that takes fisheye photos. That's it. If you want to build your own, honestly, they're not super hard. You could basically take the videos that I have showing you how to repair a Onestep SX-70, and then extrapolate that with the rest of the details that I've gone through in this video if you wanted to build your own. If you do end up building one and you post photos of it online, be sure to tag me in them and give me a shout out. Yeah, if you would, I don't know, maybe if you want to see a video of me make one from start to finish, leave a comment below. I'm no doubt going to get asked questions on if I can still build these today. The answer is yes. They're just a lot more expensive to build in terms of the parts. As I said, the fisheye lens, the fisheye viewfinder, like I built this back in the day because these were pretty cheap for me to produce. I think it was maybe 40, 50 Australian dollars worth of parts. The cameras themselves were cheap, so, you know, I think I would make a decent amount of money for the amount of labor that it took to go into one of these. I absolutely could still build one today and do that for a client, but it's really just sourcing the parts. As I said, the main thing is that the lenses, I cannot find them in black anymore. I can only find them in silver. I do have the front element of one of these lenses in black. I would just need the macro attachment because for some reason this one just never came with one. It arrived from the factory without one. So I still have part of one lens from like 10 years ago when I had it in stock. I've also got, whoops, I've also got a whole bunch of the step-down adapters as well. And the last thing that I wanted to say is I did end up making a modern version using a Onestep 2, which is obviously the modern reincarnation natively built by Polaroid Originals to take I-type film. I have made, this is the silver lens by the way, I made a modern version to honor my original Polaroid Onestep. If you guys would like to see a video on how I built this one, please leave a comment below. But I think I've waffled on long enough. This video had absolutely no flow to it, so I hope you found it entertaining. My mind is literally so fried from just the abysmal repair jobs I've had this week. You name it, I've had to fix it. I even had like my personal Polaroid 680 also blew up. Something in the flash short-circuited, which took out every other piece of electronics in the camera. The opto sensor, the PCB, my SX-70R PCB, and the DC-DC buck converter. It blew up everything except the driver chip, so I had to rebuild that in order to get it ready for a family event. It's literally just been the week of hell, so please forgive this more casual video. And yeah, I hope I will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day, guys.